o'clock. We welcome everybody to the Utah Watershed Council. And we will have Carly do a roll call count on who's in attendance. So go ahead, Carly.
Okay, Joel Ferry. Tim Davis.
Present.
Kelly Pearson.
This is Amber Brown here for Kelly Pearson.
Thank you, Amber. Dustin Jansen. Chris Hamlet. Ken White.
Sorry, Kathy Holder here for Chris Hamlet.
Thank you, Kathy. Candace Hasenjager.
Present.
Teresa Wilhelmsen. Robert Moore.
Here online.
Scott Paxman.
Here.
Victor Iverson. Val J. Rigby. Ricky Franco Browning.
Hi, here online.
Marcel Shoup.
Present.
Warren Peterson.
Here.
Nathan Doggs. Tammy Pearson.
Brandon Yardley will be in for Tammy Pearson online.
Thank you. Laura Briefer.
Present.
Mike Noel. Bill Winfield. Andy Nickel.
Present.
Peggy Killian.
Online.
Present online.
Sterling Brown. Oh, thank you. Do you want to sit at the table, Joe? Rick Smith.
Here.
Cody Allred.
I'm present online.
Brett Palmer. And that is it.
Great. Okay, got a great turnout.
And we do have a quorum.
Good to know, so we can take some action. All right, very good. Let's see, we've got approval of the minutes of April 10th, 2025. So if anybody's got any comments or questions on the minutes first, but we'd like to motion and to approve those. Yes.
I've read them. They're in good shape. I move approval of the minutes as presented.
Great.
I'll second it.
Warren, Rick's second. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of April 10th, 2025. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Very good, passes. Okay, next we've got the presentation of the Unified Water Infrastructure Plan and Water Fee Study by Shalaine. Very good, thank you.
Thank you for having me today. Give me just a second to get my presentation up and running.
So while you're getting there, I realize why men wear jackets, so they can cover the sweat stains on their shirts. just for your information. I don't know why we wear jackets, honestly. So, exactly.
Mr. Chair,
Normally
I
this
think
room.
women wear jackets because it's usually cold.
Oh, yeah,
I
that's
was
true.
going to say, in this room, they're usually necessary.
Good point. Know it.
So I feel like I need to give a little background before I jump right into an update. I know a lot of you have been involved in various parts of the water infrastructure plan, the fee study, but I just want to give some updates so everyone's on the same page. So we've actually titled this Funding Water Infrastructure in Utah Now and Beyond, kind of where we are and where we're going. For those who don't know, I am Shalaine DeBernardi. I'm an assistant director at the Division of Water Resources. Various studies, estimates, evaluations, looking at all the water infrastructure in Utah, do not paint a really pretty picture for the future, showing that by 2060, new construction, simple maintenance, expansion, improvement of existing systems could run upwards of about $60 billion in costs. So over 40 years ago, the Water Development Coordinating Council was created to help coordinate state funding for necessary water infrastructure projects. It was created to promote the coordination of these financial assistance programs, to work together to advise the governor and the legislature on funding needs. But last year, House Bill 280 made some significant changes, made some new requirements, and made changes to the council, primarily to engage in planning and prioritization of these water infrastructure projects and to expend money from a new water infrastructure fund. The Water Development Coordinating Council is made up of water resources, water quality, drinking water, the Treasurer's Office. It also includes the Department of Ag and Food and Workforce Services, which houses the Community Impact Fund Board. So all entities that provide state funding for water projects. Last year, House Bill 280 also created one change in membership, added a representative from one of the large water conservancy districts. The governor appointed Zach Renstrom from Washington County Water Conservancy District. So this is the current makeup. Other changes from House Bill 280 in 2024 did create that new water infrastructure fund, set up the Unified Water Infrastructure Plan, which we lovingly refer to as the UWIP, intended to change the way that we are funding water projects, that it isn't just a reactive response to applicants as they come in, but a proactive planning approach, similar to transportation. It also initiated some studies. The integration of existing funds study was completed last October. We'll touch on that a little bit. And currently ongoing, the water infrastructure fee study, which is some of what I'll talk about later. So this is the timeline that exists in House Bill 280. As you can see, we've passed through about half of it already. Finishing that existing funds study last year, just recently completed the relevant agency plans, and currently continuing the fee study. By March 1st of next year is when the Water Development Coordinating Council is supposed to have the first UWIP complete. Then by next July 1st, ranking and prioritization of projects, and the end of next year, the completion of the state water plan. So to touch on the integration of existing funds study a little bit, highlighted the status of funds as of last fall for the agencies that are part of the Water Development Coordinating Council, and made some recommendations for possible integration of those funds into the new WIF, Water Infrastructure Fund. And the legislature took some of those recommendations and implemented them in this year's House Bill 285. Some of the key actions were repealing the Board of Water Resources City's Water Loan Fund, taking the existing balance of that fund and all current loan repayments and depositing them into the new WIF. It also authorized transfers of money between some of the relevant agency funds and the Water Infrastructure Fund, requires new capital asset management plans and reserve funding under certain circumstances. And one of the things that we realized during the integration of existing funds study water resources, water quality, drinking water, UDAF, and housing and community development were all listed as relevant agencies, had to provide their status of funds and what could possibly be integrated. Through that study, it was realized that the Department of Ag and Food and the CIB board really didn't fit well into the WIF because their funds could be used for things outside of projects that were eligible for WIF funding. So a recommendation that was implemented where UDAF and Housing and Community Development were removed as relevant agencies. So now those requirements for reporting status of funds and possible consolidation and transfers only apply to drinking water, water quality, and water resources. So now to the UWIP. The main purpose is really to provide the state with a comprehensive list of what water projects are needed in the next 2, 5, 10, and 20 years. What are the priorities? What are the state funding needs? And making sure those necessary projects are aligned with the state water plan, goals, and recommendations. Really to help us make this a plan instead of just a response. Eligible water infrastructure project types include drinking water reuse, secondary stormwater, off-farm ag, the others you can see there. So what have we been doing? Because of this tight timeline proposed in last year's House Bill 280, there was a lot that had to happen very quickly. Our office hired a consultant team that got to work and moved really quickly. There was as much advertising as possible. Over 2,000 emails went out asking water providers to submit their project information. We were, on this short time frame, we were only had the application period open for about a month, from April to May, but we received almost 3,700 projects submitted by about 250 different entities with an estimated total cost of about $17.5 billion. So taking that information, the projects were split up between the 3 relevant agencies, and their initial plans were completed by the June 30th deadline. So now those go to the Water Development Coordinating Council, who will compile those plans and create their first UWIP. Now I added these notes because they include you before adopting this UWIP. The Water Development Coordinating Council must provide a draft to the Utah Watersheds Council. The Watersheds Council may advise on that draft. Code doesn't require it, but I'm telling you, we will take all the input we can get at this point. Through this process, we also need to develop a written prioritization process, create rules, and through that process, we will also be seeking public comment through open public meetings. So we'd also like to utilize some of the individual watershed councils if that opportunity is available to us, to be able to seek that comment, to get the word out and get the public comment on this process that we're pursuing. So that's where the UWIP is. The fee study has to be completed by October 31st of this year. We hired Zion's Public Finance to lead us as our consultant, and they've done an incredible job. There was a very in-depth presentation at the last Water Task Force meeting. So if you missed it, I'm not going to cover that here. You can go back and watch it. There is a lot of information. Our consultant has done a really great job consulting with as many water providers as he possibly can. He's met with large providers, small providers, rural, urban, getting as much input as he possibly can. For the fee study, we do have a work group that is meeting monthly. It includes representatives from rural water, agriculture. We've got water providers, government entities, districts, municipalities, small systems, medium. We're trying to include as much input as we possibly can into our consideration. We are looking at how the current funding capacity compares to the infrastructure needs. One great thing is even before we awarded the contract for a consultant, they were already planning to have an engineer on board, and the engineer also happens to be the one that is working on the UWIP. So they've been coordinating and sharing information. So as those projects and the potential state funding needs have come in, they've been shared with the fee study work group so that it's being tailored with real information, not just estimates. Part of the requirements of the fee study is to determine if a new user fee should be assessed to fund the Water Infrastructure Fund, and if that should be a fee or a tax. And then the completion of this study will provide the legislature with policy options that they can explore next year as we see how all of this moves forward. Are there any questions? Yes, Laura.
With respect to the respondents for the UIP survey, did you see any major gaps of people that were not able to respond during that short time period?
No, I don't think we did. Did we? Oh, Candace is saying yes.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Yes, go.
I don't know. I think we saw applicants from all over, but I would say that the gap that we saw is just the volume because of the short time frame, especially for off-farm ag. Agriculture typically, may not have a capital asset plan ready and pull off the shelf and say, here are my projects for the next 20 years. So I think that we did get off-farm ag, but did we get all of them? I think that's more the gap I saw is, yes, we got a lot, but it's not all of them. And I think we know that. We do anticipate having another period open for projects to be submitted before the March 1st kind of final plan, the deadline for the final plan. But I think that would be my biggest concern. I agree with Shalaine that I don't know that we saw gaps. I just think we know we're not getting everything.
Okay, and just the implication of that is that we need to do extra engagement before all right.
And I did hear that there was several that chose not to submit projects as well.
The other thing I would also mention is the Unified Water Infrastructure Plan and this process will dramatically change how the state funds water projects. If an entity is capable of going to fund it themselves, they probably won't feel a big impact because of this effort. But if they're always used to coming to the Board of Water Resources for funding or, the Water Quality Board or Drinking Water Board, they may see that like, oh, I'm not on this prioritized list, so I'm not eligible for funding, and that could be problematic for some entities. We're also trying to figure out how do we deal with emergencies, and is an emergency or is it lack of planning and preparing, right? I think the other thing I would also add to Shalaine's really good presentation is on the fee piece. When we think about what are the problem we're trying to solve, is that we have a significant need for water infrastructure, as Shalaine went over, and the state funds that are currently being put toward it are not enough to cover the needs. And we don't expect that state funds will cover all of the needs, definitely not. Historically, we've only seen about 20% of the project needs be covered by state funds, whether it's through a revolving loan fund or a grant fund. But we know that what the need is, we can't match it. So that's the potential of a fee that's the problem we're trying to solve there.
And may I ask one more question associated with that? The impact of the proposed federal budget and the removal of a lot of the SRF funds, how I'm sure you're talking about how that affects this effort.
Yes, that is something we're trying to consider, and I think that's one thing with water quality and drinking water in particular, who do have federal funds tied to their state funds. It does keep it somewhat separate. Part of the fee study is showing the estimate is that there could be about 30%, 25 to 30% of project costs needed from state funding. And some of that could be funded with existing funds that already exist, the existing sales tax that goes into the various funds, along with the already revolving funds for the various agencies, but trying to make up the difference that isn't there, and understanding that other sources of funds are not as secure maybe as what the states are.
Thank you.
And just one comment as well. So if I remember Eric's presentation, there were 3 categories of possible funding. One of them water fees, one property tax, the other one was something else.
It was existing,
okay.
yeah, the sales tax.
Oh,
and
that's right, existing sales tax, yes.
Yeah.
So it could be all, none, one or
Right.
more, whatever.
Yes.
I
looking
would
at
add
possibilities.
that through this new process, we have an opportunity to take this prioritized list to the legislature and say, we have this much money, we have this much need, here's the gap, right? When we consider all the revenues and everything that we collect, if the fee goes forward and all those type of things, there's an opportunity for the legislature to choose at that point to, if they have additional budget, to put it in, similar like
Sure.
with what they do with roads.
Right, yeah, did want to mention that, so thank you, Candace, that is part of one of the recommendations from the integration of existing fund study is, because this prioritized list, similar to transportation, will have to be approved by the legislature, will be opportunity to go to them and say, here's the shortfall.
Yes.
This is the list we've prioritized, and ask for funds, so.
Great. Any other comments, Rick?
One question is, has there been any talk about increasing the portion of the tax? And so is it 1/16 right now? Would they increase it to add more
Sales
funding to it?
tax.
I don't know that we've looked at that option right now. I think it is something we could consider because it is an existing authority. But yeah, the 1/16 is what we have available, so that's what we're looking at right now.
Yes, Warren.
Well, after beating on Shalaine during the task force, I'd hate to.
You didn't,
You
Warren.
did so well. I want to ask the local watershed council question. If I'm a member of a local watershed council and we want to be looking at project needs in our watershed and funding of that into the future, how do we engage the process? What's the short recipe for a watershed council, how to engage in the water infrastructure funding process on behalf of their local need?
So it hasn't been implemented yet, but part of the fee study, I think the proposal we're leaning towards, and that's a great question. I didn't address this here, so thank you for bringing that up, is one of the primary concerns we heard at the beginning of the study is rural areas don't want to be compared to the Wasatch Front. They don't want to be competing for the same funds. They'd like to be able to considered in their area. And so one of the things our consultant has looked at is splitting it up into the watershed basins and having recommendations come from the local watershed council. So we could look at the list, look at the state prioritization, but ask the local watershed council, can you give us your recommendations for your prioritization. Rather than the entire list, here are the projects in your area, what are the local priorities? So I think that's what we'd be looking for. And I know one of the concerns that has come from the work group is watershed councils already have a whole lot to do. And so we're not trying to put work on them as much as we want to provide opportunity for the local input. So I am definitely open to suggestions for however best that may work for the individual councils.
Great.
That might be an item for them to put on their meeting agenda then, just to, who in your office or who in Water Resources would they contact for?
Me.
Shalaine DeBernardi.
Yay.
Very good.
Contact me.
All right. Thank you, Shalaine. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So the UWIP will be sent out to the councils, all the councils or the state council? At some
I
time
believe the
before
intent is to send it out to the state council.
Okay.
That's what statute requires. If we're looking for more input, it may be sent to the individual councils if they want to see it.
Okay. And that'll be sometime prior to the March 1st
Right.
deadline. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
We haven't figured out our timeline yet, I don't think, but we've got to get this fee study finished, and then we'll definitely get our timeline set for the UWIP process completion.
Mr. Chair, one other thing I would mention, we are working closely with the governor's office to potentially utilize what they're calling the Utah Project Portal as an avenue for project submittals. So it'll be kind of something that's always open for project submittals until a final date. It's so to allow easier access, and then people would have a login. They can manage their projects. They can update them as they do. So we're looking at new technology to help improve this process going into the future. I've said this analogy many times. We are building an airplane as we're taking off, and so this is all a bit of a work in progress, but grateful for all of you guys and your support and patience through this.
Great. Thank you, Shalaine. That was a great
Thank you.
presentation. Good. A lot of good questions as well. Thank you. So we'll move on. We've got the Bear River Watershed Council report by Nathan. Yes? Oh, well, I have Nathan on the agenda, my agenda. Oh, okay. Just wherever Mike is, that'd be great. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for the invitation and opportunity to be here. There we go. All right. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I was hoping to maybe be not first on the list just to see how this is supposed to go, but I'll just do it as it comes. So, yeah. So as introduced, I'm here on behalf of the Bear River Watershed Council. I'm the current chair. My name is Mark Hurd, and I've put together a slide deck just kind of to summarize and help illustrate the activities of our Watershed Council over the last year. Yeah, so just, I mean, I know that everyone in this room is well aware of the water situations, but that I included a overview of what the Bear River Watershed looks like and the tributaries listed here, etc. Just for context in this slide deck. Obviously pointing out that the Bear River flowing through 3 states. All right, next one, Carly, thank you. Okay, so on our report, so I looked over them. Nate shared with me the minutes from the last report, and one thing that was mentioned there is that at the time we were without a chair and a vice chair, and obviously since then, the chair spot has been filled by myself, and Chance Baxter from the general manager from the Bear River Water Conservancy District was selected as vice chair, and Sean Milne continued as our secretary. So we took care of that first element of housekeeping to continue the efforts of the Watershed Council. Since in that meeting and others, we had a total of 4 meetings and 2 physical tours where we went out on site to a couple of sections of the watershed operations. The first tour we held was May 6th. A large group gathered to tour the operations at Cutler Dam on the county line between Cache County and Box Elder County. And the presentation was directed by Conley Baldwin from Rocky Mountain Power. The focus, part of the focus of the tour and the visit there was to broaden the understanding, the general understanding from the membership of the Watershed Council on the operations that exist that have an impact on the flow of water through the Bear River. And obviously Rocky Mountain Power and Pacific Core being a significant part of that. So Conley did a great presentation and communicated the operations of Cutler Reservoir and gave a good overview of everything upstream as well. We also had the USU Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, a large group attended with us. The Watershed Council members and the students and staff from the USU commingled, and we kind of split into separate groups to have hopefully a very broad conversation amongst everyone about anything that was on council members or the students' minds about things they saw, heard, or had questions about leading into the visit. It was a great opportunity. There's some pictures there illustrating what took place, and also Fox 13 News covered. It showed up, and there was a great story presented there about the collaboration there from basically a very big overhead or broad perspective on discussion about water. Next slide, Carly. Oh, thanks. The second tour that we conducted was about a month and a half later. It's listed here as Bear Lake, but what we were looking at specifically was how is the water flow to Bear Lake managed, and then how is the discharge from Bear Lake managed. So the facilities that we visited include Stewart Dam, the Lifton Pump Station, Mud Lake, which is a part of both inlet and release in a way, and then the Bear Lake Outlet Canal. Again, various pictures there, and top left corner is the motley crew that was there. So, very informative, and at least I feel like, and the feedback that I received from those that attended, that it was helpful to have these two different tours and perspectives among, people showing up with various perspectives kind of in their area, where, the reason they're on the council is because they have some sort of input or perspective. These two tours were hopefully kind of give that overview so that everyone was on some common ground. Next slide. I'm going to look over here just to make sure I don't miss anything, but so some of the details that I wanted to share here just briefly, that other activities that have taken place in the communities or entities in the watershed basin. A large group of collaborators put together a economic study, and including various markets of the value that the Bear River contributes to the area and the communities that it flows through. So there's a chart there illustrating that there's many millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in totaling across all the industries, but a few $1 billion of economic impact solely based on the availability of the water that the Bear River provides. Just some graphs showing the flow. A couple of other things to point out I felt important is that there's roughly or estimated 850,000 acres of land used for irrigation or for agricultural, both livestock and crop production, about 75% of those acres are irrigated with Bear River or watershed water. Let's see, during the legislative session, we as a council kind of selected to have Trevor Nilsson from the Bear River Canal Company kind of be our watchdog for legislative matters and also our conduit for sharing information during the session. He did a great job, and in one of our meetings, we were actually hosted the meeting remotely from the Capitol, where he was able to present on the fly updates about legislative matters. Also, some of the council members, this wasn't a formal tour, but some council members attended the Lilac Solutions pilot lithium extraction site or facility on the north end of the Great Salt Lake. I wasn't able to attend, but I believe, Nate, were you one of the? Yeah, Nate attended, and just kind of along the same lines of expanding the broad understanding of how our watershed fits into the bigger picture also. Let's see, our next council meeting will be held sometime in October. We haven't picked the date just yet. There's a couple of things that we're hoping to time that would set that date for us, but one of the items being a local project that is taking place. It's the Logan River Watershed project that's been going on for some years, and we have environmental impact study report that we hope to have in October. And that will kind of that is a big deal to several of the membership on the council, the Watershed Council, myself included, as the Hyde Park Canal, which is who I represent, why I'm on the council, is one of the 10 canal companies that project would involve. And then the other is we hope to have a report from Stephanie McGinnis on the state water plan survey results. That's pretty much what I had intended to report. Well, that is what I intended to report. If there's any questions, happy to field any and see if I can answer.
Great, thank you for that presentation. Any questions or comments for Mark? Warren?
Yeah, of course. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Warren.
Have you published your book yet on how to manage a open channel irrigation canal in an urban setting?
No books published, but boy, I have some material.
I'm sure you do. In the 850,000 acres of ag land in the Bear River drainage, does that include just the Utah property, or does that include Idaho and Wyoming?
So I perceive that, well, Nate can answer better, but
okay.
The majority of it would be the Utah side.
Yeah, that would be all three states.
That would be all three states.
And it's split pretty close between the other two states and Utah.
So half in Utah.
Utah's about 46 or 47% of the water use.
Mm-hmm.
The other two states make up the additional.
Okay. We'd like you to color that water when it comes across the state boundary so that we can figure out how much Utah's actually using compared to. Okay, Aggie blue, right?
Aggie blue.
All right, good. You went on the tour out to the Lilac Solutions. What are your impressions of that?
Well, we're going to get deep in here, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty neat technology that they're using out there. To be able to pretty much have zero depletion on the lake water itself. They'll have a little freshwater depletion from their well or spring there at some point. Right now they're hauling truckloads of fresh water in to do their test.
Mm-hmm.
But it is pretty cool technology. They have all that set up in, shipping containers essentially, and you can walk through and watch that water go through the whole process. If it really works, at least from what I saw, that's, I think, pretty neat that they can be hauling that many truckloads of lithium out of there a day at full capacity. Pretty good technology. If we can do that with all the minerals off the lake, that it'll just start to come up.
That's good news.
Thanks,
Nate.
Yes. Follow up, Scott. I had a question too, but just to follow up on the lithium, I got a report on that just a couple days ago. But it is transitioning from a study period into a more permanent structure as they've developed that. And once it's up and running, it will be on par to be the largest lithium mine in the country. There's that much lithium out there, so could be a really interesting and kind of a way of the future as we look at, conservation and recognizing that water has pretty significant value, right? But the second question I had on the Logan River, Mark, you had mentioned some of those projects. I'm not as familiar with what's going on there. I know, is it on First Dam or Second Dam? And I know that that area behind Second Dam has been dry for years. They've drained that down and it just kind of flowed through. Or third dam, excuse me.
Yeah, third dam is really just
It's gone.
channel now.
And I think it's essentially going to be that way. I've heard for.
Yeah, there was an
they're not
effort
planning to
last
rebuild it,
year.
or
Yeah, the efforts
Maybe
last
give me a
year were
heads up
made
there,
to dredge that second dam
Mhm.
to help expand capacity, and that was part of the Watershed Council's tour the year prior, was to go and visit that site and see the improved capacity there. The Logan River Watershed Project is, if you're familiar with the Crockett Avenue diversion, it's literally named that because that's the street it's next to, down on the island in the area of Logan. The diversion is in need of updates and repairs, and so something needs to be done. And so as the 10 canal companies that divert the water out at that same location, we're all collaborating together at this point to come up with go through the planning process and all the related studies to select how we will either repair that diversion, replace the diversion, or relocate the diversion, which could include efforts at First Dam. The priority, at least at this point in conversations, has been to take all these open channel canals and pipe them, and also do it in such a way that there's pressurized delivery for every service user on that system. There's several, I think there's 4 projects, if I remember right. There's 4 projects options, and part of the environmental impact study will help drive which way we go with the remainder of the engineering and which option is selected. The service area that this impacts is basically the entirety of Logan from Second East west out to the Benson Marina area and where the Logan River and the Little Bear and Blacksmith and all that comes back together, as well as then in our case out north to Hyde Park. Our canal is the longest running canal and the furthest north traveling canal, or where the water moves the furthest north out of those 10 systems. And so we do pick up 3 communities are served by this Crockett Avenue project, and so there would be a large area. I can't remember the acreage off the top of my head, how much service area between all of the canal companies this actually covers, but the large impact would be pulling a lot of outdoor irrigation or outdoor water use for secondary water for home use would be put onto this pressurized system rather than be used to using the culinary systems from all 3 cities to meet that watering need. So the cities are on board in this project as well as the irrigation companies.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments, Warren?
Yeah, thank you. Going back to, I'm not sure how to address him, Executive Director Ferry's comments about the lithium mining. That the this will be one of the first ones since the bill was passed that says royalties off of that sort of thing will come back to the benefit of the lake. So that'll, if there's that much lithium coming off there, that ought to be a pretty decent royalty stream. What happens to it? Yeah. How does it? Has that been set up, or has it been decided what happens to those?
On the royalty?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that royalty, as it's determined, will be paid back into the Sovereign Lands Management account and be specifically held to benefit Great Salt Lake for projects. So there's a long list of different things that it can be used for. Right now, that sovereign lands management account brings in between $8 and $11 million a year from the existing royalty and fees that are collected. And so we just had to see, it's a little bit speculative right now to see where it's going to go, but there's a big need out there for it, so it'll help supplement that.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Any other comments, questions on Bear River? Great. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along. We've got the Utah Lake Watershed Council report. Let's see. I've got Joe Crawford doing that. Is that right? Oh, nice.
Hello.
Great.
So, hi, my name is Joe Crawford. I'm currently the chair of the Utah Lake Watershed Council, and I'm just happy to be here. So I just wanted to start off just go to the next slide, just kind of remind people who's on our council. So this is, I'm filling in today for Sterling, but I'm the chair, Joe Crawford, and then we have Rich Mickelson. He's our vice chair. He works for Timpanogos Special Service District, and Corey Pierce, who works for Spanish Fork. He's our secretary, and then, as you know, Sterling Brown, he's our council representative, and then Ben Abbott from BYU, he's our Great Salt Lake Watershed Council representative. And then the next slide, I won't go all through all the names, but really my point was kind of like when I came into this room today, I just there's a lot of leaders in this room, a lot of great people. They're doing great work, and I feel the same way about the people that are on the council for the Utah Lake Council. Just a lot of great people, a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise, and it's great people to work with, and it's been a great opportunity for me to be able to be in the same room and as we worked together on this. So you go to the next one. So really, if the first year that we had a lot of field trips, we probably went anywhere from 6 to 8 different field trips, and we got a lot of good information. We made a lot of good relationships with different landowners, different state entities, different federal entities. And so this year, we really were trying to figure out, we have a lot of good information and we've done a lot of good things, but now what? So we can go to the next slide. So one of the things that we were encouraged to do and we thought was a great thing to do is we spent one whole meeting working on a mission statement and a vision statement. We're almost 100% there. I would share it, but we're not quite there. But the reason I brought this up is just really, we as a Utah Lake Watershed Council are just really trying to make sure that we use the information that we've been given, take the expertise that we have, and make sure that we're really heading in the right direction. And so you can just see some of the words up there that we value water, right? And it's sustainable, have stewardship, and so on and so forth. And so it was really a good exercise for us as our council to really focus on, okay, we have a lot of information, now what? And so in a couple of slides, I'll just kind of show you where some of the things that we're going to be doing going forward as a result of some of the things that we thought of. So then the next slide, we really appreciated Stephanie coming to our meeting and talking about the state water plan. We have a lot of, as all of the councils, we have great ideas and we have a lot of expertise, but we also want to take advantage of the opportunity to implement, right? And so Stephanie did a good job of talking to us hey, if you really want to start taking some of your ideas, one of the best places to start would be the state water plan. So she invited us to take that survey, to give her feedback, to let her know hey, this is what is important to the Utah Lake Watershed Council. And so I know I took advantage of that opportunity. I know other members of our board did as well. And so we're really, once again, really this year focusing on taking what we've learned the first year and start making a difference. So that being said, what are the plans for the future? As I mentioned, we had that get together where we've talked about the vision, the mission. And so I just kind of show you some of the ideas what we want to go, so you can go to the next one. So really, we've talked about some field trips, and I'll talk about this as well, some of the field trips to get more information. So the first one we're talking about, well, what about, because one of the areas that we haven't focused on right now really is the Forest Service. A lot of what we did the first year is a lot of private landowners, a lot of state areas, and so maybe we need to start looking also outside of that area in the Forest Service and BLM and look at different land treatments that are happening. We also haven't contacted the canal companies yet. One of the things we realized that they have a lot of information. They have a lot of good knowledge about the system. And what's one of the things that we as a council discussed is like, hey, an area that we haven't tapped into yet are the canal companies. The next one, the other one, someone brought up, it's a hot topic right now, is microplastics. And so it's something that would, and is interesting to us as a council. It's another topic that we talked about, reaching out to Summit County and talking about a current project that they're doing. Another one is, as you all, anybody that knows anything about Utah Lake knows that there's a Phragmite problem. And we have, one of the tours we took is we went out in Utah Lake, and indeed there's lots of Phragmites. But we would like to reach out to the expertise in that area and the people on the Utah Lake Council and help us understand what we can do as a council to help them spread that message. And then not only that, but also look at what's been successful. Is what's very important to us as a council, to not only to take our expertise and help encourage and implement change, but also to take a look at what's worked. Because I know that there's a lot of money being spent, as you all know, that on Phragmites and on Utah Lake, a lot of emphasis, but I think it's important to remember and to recognize what's been done. And then the last couple of ideas is we've talked about, well, what about doing something a little bit different? As I mentioned, we've been on several field trips, and we thought about having the experts come to us and being able to, and one of the reasons we thought that is we can have the opportunity to have a lot of experts come in all at once. And so one of the things we talked about this coming year is having a panel from several different entities and give us a bunch of information, and so we can make better decisions. And then the other thought we had, similar thought process, but just more of a lunch and learn session more. And so that's really where we're at as a council, is we're in the process of now what. And you can go to the last slide, because I really appreciated the presentation talking about funding. Because that's one of the things we've had a lot of discussion is we have so much knowledge and we've gone through this whole process, and it would be great to be able to have, as we all know, unlimited funds to be able to start making changes. One of the examples that we talked about is where we're at. So Corey, as I mentioned, he's with Spanish Fork City. Rich, he's with Panoga Special Service District. They just spent millions and millions of dollars upgrading their plants. Tim's still in the process, but we're like, wouldn't it be cool if we as a council could afford to put some sensors in the water to be able to just track, like, hey, Utah Lake was receiving, this is what Utah Lake looked like before we just spent as a state millions of dollars upgrading these treatment plants. Now we have new treatment plants, or we will have new treatment plants. What does the water quality look like going forward? And so we realized that funding is an issue, but that's something that I just wanted to pass on to you as the Utah Watershed Council, is that we appreciate all of the work that you do, all of the efforts. As I mentioned, we know that we appreciate that you're willing to remember that we're all in the same page, that we all need funding. And I just also wanted to help you know where we're at as a council and some of our desires of being able to just take a little bit of, it would be great to be able to have a little bit of money and just do a little bit of projects. And so with that, once again, I just appreciate the opportunity to be here and to just kind of give you an update on where we're at as the Utah Lake Watershed Council.
Very good. Yeah, great presentation. Joel.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Joe, thank you for being here. Looks like you guys have been busy.
Yeah.
Lots of work, lots of good work. I just had one or maybe two things. one thing with two parts.
Yeah.
Phragmites. That is literally the bane of my existence.
Yes.
And so I'm glad to see that you're focused on that. We have been making significant strides on Utah Lake itself. So Department of Natural Resources, Utah Lake's the sovereign body of water, and so the bed of the lake is owned and controlled by the state, and DNR has that responsibility. We've seen on the lake itself, 80% reduction in the amount of Phragmites around Utah Lake. So we've had significant success. However, there's a lot of additional work that needs to be done. And when I look at the list of people on your council, there's a lot of public elected officials, people that work for public entities, cities, county, etc. One of those areas that I think that we need some help with is those areas off Utah Lake. So the drainages, the sloughs, the creeks, everything that runs into Utah Lake. A lot of those are choked off with frag as well, and a lot of that's seed or the root comes down and attaches itself and grows. And it's a real challenge because we've got to eradicate Phragmites in the state of Utah. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible plant. And so I can tell you from the Department of Natural Resources, we're here to help. We have resources, we have expertise and knowledge. We've been fighting frag for decades and have made great strides but it takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of money, and you got to be consistent. You can't it's not a one and done thing. It's every year, you got to go in and treat. It grows somewhere else, you got to go treat it. You got to chase it, So, but I think if we work together with your council, with some of the folks in Utah and Salt Lake counties on this, on that watershed, we can continue to make great strides and do some good things together. And you think about how much water that Phragmite consumes. It's a huge vegetative, like the volume of vegetation that it produces. That is a lot of water that's consuming. And so as we eradicate and remove it, you're talking about actually more than just an ecosystem restoration. You're also talking about a water conservation measure. And so I commend you for your efforts there and appreciate the hard work you guys have been doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I really appreciate that feedback because, like I said, one of the things that I've learned very quickly, even more so, is the importance of relationships. And so I very much appreciate knowing that we have that resource, because that's really what we as a council really are trying to maximize at every level is who can we bring, who's the expert, because we realize we're not the experts in every area. So I really appreciate that comment. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Go with Laura.
First of all, I'm Laura with the Jordan River Watershed Council, and just wanted to thank the Utah Lake Watershed Council for coordinating with our council. We have a lot of interconnections. And then secondly, you mentioned the need for some monitoring post-treatment plant upgrades. Are you thinking of monitoring for nutrients, or what were your thoughts on that?
So my thought was to start small. So in my other role at Central Utah Water, I'm watershed programs manager. So I have a lot, they're called SONs, right? And so I think it would just be amazing to be able to deploy a sonde at the outflow of the treatment plants and just start there, recognizing that those sondes can collect sample every 5 minutes forever if you keep them upright, but realizing that grab samples be a lot more expensive, a lot more time consuming, but simply looking at conductivity, pH, temperature, dissolved oxygen, just for a baseline, I think, was what we were really thinking.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, comment. Come on up.
Thanks for allowing me to speak from the gallery. Soren Simonson. I work with Laura Briefer as staff for the Jordan River Watershed Council. And I wanted to just key in on Joel's comment about Phragmites. What happens around Utah Lake affects the next watershed down. We're also struggling a lot with Phragmites. I've been really impressed. We have a representative on our Watershed Council who represents agriculture. Some of you may know Betty Naylor with Gardner Heritage Farms in West Jordan, and she's really enlightened me about a significant role that land managers, particularly those in the agricultural industry, can play in dealing with noxious weeds. She shared with me some work that they'd been doing with Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District on their property to take what was just a patch of weeds and turn it into productive land that they help manage. And it was really insightful. We've seen in Utah County, the Jordan River that's closely connected with Utah Lake, as Phragmites have extended from the lake into the river. And we've watched areas that were agricultural lands within the last decade. And as livestock have moved from those lands, and they've been fallow sometimes for a few years, as development projects are coming forward, that we've just seen an explosion of Phragmites and Russian olive. We know that the Legacy Nature Preserve manages Phragmites and other invasive species really effectively around the Jordan River with cattle and other livestock. So there's some synergies with the different kinds of representation on our watershed councils that may be really valuable and important perspectives in dealing with noxious weeds and things like that, and maybe some innovation that might be there. I know the area of the inlet to the Jordan River, because of all of the heavy infrastructure that's there with the pump station and the flood control gates and all of that, that's an area we're really concerned that Phragmites just keeps infesting areas that are being treated in Saratoga Springs and Lehigh. But dealing with Phragmites in that particular location is a real challenge. And we would love to collaborate with your Watershed Council and find some solutions that improve both the lake and that North Shore and the Jordan River. And I'll echo Laura that we would love to continue to collaborate and find, things that we can work on together with both Watershed Councils to tackle this challenge.
I think the Phragmites issue is really important too, and there may be opportunities to reduce depletion within the Great Salt Lake watershed with the removal of Phragmites and having a concentrated effort that way.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate that, the feedback, the input, and the offer. I think it's a great opportunity to continue and build that relationship that we have. And so you'll definitely be reaching out for sure. So yeah, I definitely think it'd be a great idea and way to maximize our expertise and our everything that we have at our disposal.
Great. Thank you, Joe. So every watershed that is within the Great Salt Lake Basin has major Phragmite issues. Bear River, Weber River, Jordan River, and on up. So
and every ditch and slough.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
This is Peggy. I just have a quick question.
Go ahead.
When
Peggy.
we talk about the Phragmites, do we find that also is spread by the wildlife and that, not just the cattle? I'm just curious about that.
Good question.
Because I know there's a lot of wildlife that eats in that too, and so I'm just wondering, are we looking at that it's just cattle that does that, or do we have a lot of wildlife that spreads that also?
May I take a shot at this one? Okay. So that's a really, really good question. The cattle don't necessarily spread Phragmite, they eat the Phragmite. And so they prevent it from spreading. So Phragmite spreads two ways: through seed dispersion. It's got a very light seed that blows in the wind. And then also it's rhizomatous. So you have a root mass, and that colony will, like if you have, the root or vegetative matter that like breaks off, floats downstream and attaches itself in the soil, it will resprout. And you get clones. And so a lot of the Phragmites that we've tested are actually clones of existing colonies, right? It just clones itself and grows and grows and grows. And so what cattle do is they will eat the frag and prevent it from going to seed, right? It doesn't get into a mature state to where it produces a seed. So that helps stop spreading. And then also the way Phragmite spreads is it sends out these long runners. So over the surface, and they have little nodules every 12 to 18 inches that send roots down, then it grows, sends roots down, and it grows. And so you'll see a Phragmite patch starts out as a small little circle, and every year it grows out and expands 20 feet, 20 feet, 20 feet. And in 10 years, you've got 5,000 acres that's covered in Phragmite. And so doesn't really get dispersed necessarily by wildlife. It's going to be very incidental, wildlife or cattle. Actually, it has very low wildlife value. The seeds aren't really, they're not like a bulrush seed where the wildlife will eat, like the birds, the migratory birds will eat it. Very little habitat from nesting or cover. It's just such a thick, because it grows 12 to 14 feet tall, and it's just a thick monoculture stand. And it's just super aggressive because it's an invasive. It's non-native and invasive species. So there's nothing, it outcompetes everything else. It consumes all the resources, all the water, all the nutrient, and it outcompetes everything else. And, if it were harvestable, it would be an incredible crop because it grows so well. Unfortunately, it's not because it grows in the water and there's not a lot of value that way. But grazing is a very effective. In fact, you look at the number of acres that are currently being grazed around the Great Salt Lake, and it's thousands of acres, it's thousands of AUMs. It's actually been one of the really bright spots from a DNR perspective of partnering with the private community cattle grazers to provide opportunity for food, feed resources where the ranges have dried up or they go through drought. Those have been really good offsets, and you now have from all the way up north at Salt Creek and public shooting grounds down south to across all the shores of Great Salt Lake. There's a lot of grazing that occurs now, so it's really an interesting way that we're combating it. And as Soren said, it's pretty beneficial for the local ag community as well. So.
Thank you for clarifying. I guess I was listening incorrectly because I thought I had heard that it was the cattle that were causing the issues. But it sounds to me like the grazing issue helps with the spread, helps with the phragmites, the grazing. Is that how correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Warren.
One historical note. Soren mentioned Betty Naylor's name. Thank you for that. And the reason that Betty Naylor's on your Jordan River Council was because when you adapted the council so it also could be the Watershed Council, you need an agricultural representative, and that one's worked out quite well, it sounds like.
True. Okay, any other questions for Joe on the Utah Lake Council? Okay, looks like we're good. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. All right, we've got another Watershed Council that's going to come in a little later no, they're here. Let's go ahead and do that one for the Weber River Watershed Council.
All right. My name is McKinley Smoot. I'm one of the members of the Watershed Watershed Council. I'm a rancher in Summit County. Wasn't able to prepare a slide deck. I apologize, but I've got a few things to say. First thing we did last fall, we went and investigated and experienced the Weber Provo Canal diversion point there, which takes quite a bit of water from the Weber River and into the Provo. The Provo River owns a very large water right there, and they take that usually during high water. And we saw how the Provo River Water Users Association manages that, saw the infrastructure. Dave Fox was there. He was great to talk to. Dave's a great guy. Worked with him a lot in a lot of different ways. And we also did a tour of Three Springs Land and Livestock, which specializes in the grazing that a lot of people were talking about, holistic plan grazing specifically, which is, how do you get livestock in the right place at the right time with the right behavior? And we had a short interaction there, saw how animals, even if they're not fenced out of a riparian area, if they're managed correctly, usually have very little detriment to a watershed or a stream bed specifically. So yeah, we did that last fall in August, and then in January, the Weber River Partnership, which is an organization that we'll be talking about a lot more, puts on every year, and they have different experts in different fields about different stakeholders and projects going on through the entire Weber River watershed. and what kind of new technologies, new management tactics can benefit the river, and kind of overall concern of what's going on in the entire river. We've been attempting to participate with the Great Salt Lake Advisory Committee, kind of challenging to figure out how we can, if I'm going to be totally candid, I don't know how we can participate there. We go to the meetings and it's just like, okay, cool. So we've been trying to be there, but it's, I think there could be some room for improvement if I'm going to be really candid about that. It kind of seems like there's something already happening, and to insert ourselves would be a little bit odd because it's I don't know. And so, and then we did have Rose Smith, who's with the Sageline Collaborative, come up and talk to us about different projects they've been doing specifically in the East Canyon Creek, which is a significant water quality issue that we have in the Weber River. For those of you who don't know where that is, that's the canyon going to Evanston, essentially. There's a creek down there by the railroad.
The
Echo Creek, sorry. I apologize.
I didn't think East Canyon was that bad.
No, it's Echo Creek. I apologize. Thank you for the correction. Nothing against East Canyon Creek. But yeah, Echo Creek, severe erosion. Every time there's a snow event, a rain event, or during the runoff, that creek itself turns the entire middle Weber totally red. And it's not a very large creek in and of itself. So Sageline Collaborative has been doing some BDA projects. They've been working with local ranchers. One of Ensign Ranches up there, where Jeff Young, who kind of manages a lot of those ranches, did a project with them to show them how they've been doing grazing, which they've been doing for a long time, really probably for 20 years, and how they've totally restored portions of Reese Creek, I believe is what it's called. And it doesn't have the same erosive qualities, and that's a challenging area because it's pretty high altitude and it's very windy, and so it's hard to get vegetation to establish there, and that's kind of a mystery about how to restore that watershed portion of the watershed up there. And so they've been trying to do that with BDAs. It's really, really cool to see how that does make a difference, assuming that you can manage them over the long term. And then, Stephanie McGinnis came and spoke to us about state water plan, and we've been hopefully got most of our our folks to respond to that, and we're looking forward to the kind of the summary of that. And I know that Carly and Stephanie are hoping to have more folks be involved on how to write portions of that. And then we've had some water quality discussions. There was, during the winter, the Weber Water Conservancy District had a pretty severe TOC event in their water treatment facility. They had to shut it down, and it's hard to identify the cause of that. I don't think we totally identified the cause of what was.
It was Echo Creek.
It could have been Echo Creek.
It was.
Yeah. It was during the winter, and as everything was melting off, they didn't say it was sediment. They said it was some kind of animal agriculture potentially did that, and it was hard to ID exactly where that was because it happened below Echo Reservoir, and so they had so that was something that we talked about, and we maybe narrowed it down to a couple different people, and there's the Ag VIP program that we brought to their attention that maybe could help with certain producers who are, potentially, doing just winter grazing near a watershed or stream bed. We've invited our conservation districts along the Weber watershed. We've had a couple of participants, specifically from Davis County, Davis Soil Conservation District. We haven't had any other folks show up at this point, and we'd like to get them involved because obviously they seem to get the most traction, specifically with the agricultural producers. And then the Weber River Partnership, we've been trying to coordinate with them. They've been an organization that's been around for, I think, more than a decade now, and they have had quite a bit of momentum moving forward on different projects, identifying the real problems. We kind of just showed up, and we realized that after the bill was passed to create the councils, that we may be kind of treading on the same ground as these folks who've been kind of in the weeds for a while. And so we have made the decision to meet with them, I think, biannually, twice a year. So 2 out of our 4, meetings, we'll be meeting with them to address a lot of the issues that they've been dealing with. One of the main issues that they ran into is that there's a 9 Creeks, I think is what it's called, or 9 Springs development. Anyway, I think it's near the border of Weber and Morgan County. It's a development over, I think, a few thousand acres that is pretty harsh, at least from what they showed us on the watershed itself in that area. And there's quite a bit of frustration with the state legislature on the fact that they are able to kind of bypass all the municipal and county governing bodies to go straight to the governor or the lieutenant's governor's office to get what they need to do there to develop that. So they've created a letter that's pretty comprehensive, and it kind of is actually an echo of the entire issue that we all feel is the main problem when it comes to all of our water issues, whether it's quantity, water quality, environmental issues, recreational issues. It's a very good letter. We'll probably distribute that to this group here shortly. It's you can just remove the name 9 Springs, and you can say, oh, well, that's a pretty good summary of what's going on and the concerns. And so for us as a council and them as the partnership, we feel that kind of is our desire to apply in at least the Weber watershed. And so we'll be sending that out as soon as we get it. We were supposed to have it by now, but I think that was me who dropped the ball to make sure I got that in an email. And then Rick and it's Leighton. What's the organization that you had? Davis Weber Canal and the Darren Smith with the Weber Water Conservancy District voiced concerns about future growth and like having enough water to support that growth, to actually supply water, just culinary water to folks within like 50 to 100 years. It's the same clip. I think there's a pretty real concern that could be done, possible. And that was interesting to hear from them, from folks who are actually dealing with that kind of infrastructure. And there was another item that our agency participation folks would like to kind of identify. There's illegal diversions in the Weber River. There's probably illegal diversions in every watershed. And there's a concern of lack of measurement. And it's really, the state, and I know, you guys are dealing with that all the time, and it seems like we're getting at least in the right direction to see what's actually being used. And so that was just something they said, and we kind of got into the weeds and how complex of an issue that would be with each water user, even each water user inside of a canal or inside of an irrigation company. And so that's kind of what we've been talking about for a while, and we're trying to identify what are the next steps. Same with kind of the Provo Watershed Council. What do we do next? We have a lot of good information, and it seems like it's a challenge to distill that into a digestible form for everybody. But we found that 9 Springs letter to be pretty good. So hopefully send that out to you shortly.
Great. Thanks, McKinley. Any questions or comments for McKinley? Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, I just appreciate that the Provo River Water Users Association is working with you and helping educate around the different diversions. I serve on their board since we're a recipient of water, and we've actually talked about that. So glad to hear Dave went out and met with you.
Dave's a great guy.
He is.
Yeah, I like Dave a lot.
Okay, and I know the partnership has a conference every spring.
It's usually in the winter. It's in January.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
true.
Yeah, January. So if anybody wants to go nerd out on water, every January they have that.
It's a pretty good conference.
And there's a lot of good people.
January 13th,
This
26th.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Not in this room. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Very good, thank you, McKinley, appreciate that information, that's great. Okay, moving on. So, just wanted to remind the state council as well as the local councils that we're looking for topics to talk with the legislators about, and we would love to have those submitted to myself or Carly over the next probably a couple months. Things are stirring up already at the legislature, so time is of the essence, I'm sure. And along with that, we do want to schedule a time when our legislative subcommittee can meet, probably in the next 6 to 8 weeks, so that we can discuss whatever the local councils bring up. But does anybody have any suggestions or legislative concerns that they would like to bring up at this meeting? Okay, please submit those online or to myself or Carly. So, Laura?
I'm just starting to feel like it's going to be a really busy legislative session, given all of the interim conversations. And, is our next Watershed Council meeting in October?
Yes.
That might be a good time for us. Maybe we'll have a little bit more information and certainty about things that are coming this session.
That's probably about the latest that we would want to discuss it. But
Yeah.
yes, I think that'd be a great idea, is to have a list or have some ideas on topics that we want to discuss.
And how to keep
legislatively.
our local councils informed through the process.
Very true.
Yeah.
Yes, Warren?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. In that regard, part of the Watershed Council Act, Section 309, 73-10G-309, if you haven't read that lately, we have quite a homework assignment to put
I was going to read that on the next item, so
I'm going to
go ahead and read it.
Where do you want to start? The whole thing?
Start with number 1. Yep.
Number 1, the Natural Resources, Ag and Environment Interim Committee shall direct a review of this part, which shall begin no later than October 1st, 2024, and end before September 30th, 2025.
Right, that's before our next council meeting.
Yes, it's before our next council meeting, but that means we need to be in the September Natural Resources, Ag and Environment Interim Committee meeting.
Correct.
So
yeah, it absolutely does.
That gives us about 6 weeks to pull that together.
Yes. So this is saying that the interim committee has to direct a review of the Watershed Council. So, which basically lands with us, is my guess.
Yes, it does.
And I'm trying to recall. I feel like at one of the interim meetings, they mentioned it. They didn't get very far.
Was the last time we presented our review last year?
Maybe that's when it was.
Yeah.
Seems like it, but can't remember exactly what was said there.
Yeah.
I'll look back at my notes.
And shall we keep
Yes,
going?
please.
Yes. Subsection 2.
Mm-hmm.
What water nerds? I don't know. The state council shall clearly identify, so that's us, for the Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Environment Interim Committee, the public purposes and interests for which the councils were originally created, and whether those public purposes and interests are still relevant and are being adequately addressed through the councils.
So this one's tough. This one's going to be a little tougher to discuss with the committee, because they're asking our opinion of basically what we're doing, and if it's relative, and how we feel like we can continue, or do we feel like we can continue and be worth worthwhile in our efforts as watershed councils. So we
Yeah,
gotta
that's-
think long and hard about this one.
Yeah, we need some strong input from the local councils. I would assume.
Absolutely, yes.
Are you ready for number 3?
Yep. Go ahead.
Number 3, or subsection 3, the Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Environment Committee shall consider the extent to which the councils have operated in the public interest and served as valuable forums for water-related discussions among stakeholders.
Another tough one.
Yeah, another tough one. We just well go.
Yeah, show our value. So
yeah.
Yep.
And it's the committee that has to be convinced and then
absolutely
present that.
Yes.
And finally, the 4th subsection, the interim committee shall submit a report of its recommendations, including proposed legislation and recommendations concerning the part, to the legislature before January 1st, 2026.
Yeah, and that's too late, basically.
Too late, yeah.
But yes.
And there are some items for legislation that some of the local councils have raised with me.
Yeah, let's bring them up here, because
okay. Well,
it'd be good to at least bring them up and think about them.
One of them is the act calls for quarterly meetings, and sometimes they say that's really not needed. Semi-annual would be good. Semi-annual would be better, and then of course they have the right to call meetings if they have something going on. The other one, I don't know that I fully understand or I'm fully informed on it, but the per diem and mileage, they said that the mileage requests are being declined if the person traveled less than 90 miles to get to the meeting. Now, it just so happens in the Sevier Basin, it's about 85 miles from Delta to Richfield. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So
take the back.
That might be one for our director to look into here and see if that's a problem.
Good one, yes.
Thank you, Warren, for bringing that to our attention. I would ask maybe for if you or other people have a specific example that we could look into that would be helpful.
Okay. I'll work with Carly and we'll
Great.
work that out.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, and the other thing, frankly, is that on behalf of these council members in some of the rural areas, for us, it's kind of, for me, kind of like coming to Salt Lake. Some of you might say, "Oh, I have a meeting this afternoon, Watershed Council." For me, it's I have a meeting today.
Yes, all day.
Watershed Council, yeah. And for some of these folks that maybe travel 2 days, I've got a meeting this week. To go to, and it is quite a more demanding. So
absolutely,
I'll offer that perspective and then be quiet so you can get on with this.
Oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. So similar discussions need to happen in the local councils, whether you do it through email before our next state council or in your council meetings physically. But please ask. Bring these things up in the local councils if there's legislative fixes that you see that are necessary or just some issues that you would like to resolve. So we'd love to hear those things. Peggy, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just really appreciate the local water councils because it's made us all become so aware of what's going on in our areas. We've become more involved. It's allowed more people to become involved. I was just, as we discussed that number 2 there, I mean, it's allowed people to have a voice and have a say and be able to kind of have those conversations and become aware of what's actually out there in our communities. You listen to all these presentations. People are becoming acquainted with what water resources are out there. A lot of us didn't even know some of that until we're actually on these councils now, and we're starting to become more aware and more appreciative and finding ways and opportunities that maybe we can help, or that, I understand we're just kind of still new and still evolving as councils. But as for me, perspective on these local councils is very important. I mean, it's a very important thing for all the people within those areas to be able to have those councils available to be able to learn from and to give input. That's just my 2 cents.
Great. Well, thank you, Peggy. That's exactly what we want to hear, because that shows a lot of value. And so great points. Thank you. Any other comments? Candace?
I'm curious of trying to move this piece forward of the state council clearly identifying for the committee, you know, all of these things. If how we want to do that before the September 30th date, and since we're not meeting till October, do we want a small subcommittee to kind of work together to help draft it and then do some sort of approval via email, or have a special electronic meeting? I'm just trying to figure out what the next steps are so we can prepare.
Yes. So I had the same issues or the same questions, and I think you know, anyone is invited to participate for sure, but a subcommittee that's already formed is the legislative subcommittee. I think we would start there, and but please, if you're interested in participating in either the legislative or this review process, we need as many brains as we can. So, but we will have to. In fact, one of my next items is set a date for that subcommittee to meet, so that we can start the process and get moving on it. So, it's got to be before our next council meeting for sure, preferably next month would be nice if everybody's around, or if we're available. So I think we've got everybody here except for, there was just, let's see, Mike Noel is not. That's really it on the subcommittee. So do we want to throw out some dates right now while we've got people here? And then that way, anybody else can participate if they would like as well.
Are you thinking August?
Yes.
Sorry, can I ask a question? So,
sure.
Who is on the subcommittee?
Oh, yes, I should have pointed that out. So right now, myself, Warren Peterson, Laura Briefer, Mike Noel, Marcel Schroop, Ricky. Oh, she was here.
She's online.
Ricky, and I don't know, I'm pretty sure Sterling was on this list, wasn't he?
I don't think he was, but
Okay.
I think I told him I was volunteering him.
Yes.
So.
The vice chair ought to be on the subcommittee. So that's the list, and a representative from Water Resources.
Attended the last meeting.
So can I volunteer proxy for me?
Yes. Yeah.
Mark Stratford.
Mark Stratford, and he's on as well. Oh yeah, he's there still. Great, good selection. Okay, so yes, I was looking at August. 12th, 14th. Monday the 11th. So that week of the 11th is fairly open. I got conference the next week. What's that?
How about 10 on the 12th? I'm just picking.
10 on the 12th.
Oh.
Laura's unavailable that week.
It's okay, but you can go without me.
We can try to do something.
But yeah, but you can't go without us.
Yes, exactly.
I'll be in Montana, so.
Oh, that sounds fun. Monday the 11th at 1. Works for me. Oh, okay. Does that work for everybody? Mark, are you listening? Mark Stratford?
Hi guys, this is Ricky. I apologize. I could not do Monday the 11th, but I could do the 12th.
You make it a week? No.
Maybe we could have
for the most part, that's probably going to happen anyway. So 12th at 10. Okay. August 12th at 10 o'clock. Okay. Oh, there he is. Hey, Mark. He says good. All right. Nice. Okay. Perfect. So again, anybody that would like to participate, get a hold of Carly or I, and we can send that invitation out. Okay, that was several items that we covered there. Just let me look here. So election of officers and those that have end of year membership changes. So to let you know, the membership changes, the members that have expiring terms on December 31st of this year are Robert Moore, Nathan Doggs, Laura Briefer, Sterling Brown, Rick Smith, Brett Palmer, and Rico Browning. So what is the process? I mean, I read the whatever this is called, and it was very unclear other than they need to be reappointed, right? By, I assume, the governor's office.
Yeah, well, if they're from a local watershed council, their watershed council will reappoint them.
Okay.
And I believe since I typed this, Laura has been reappointed.
Oh, nice.
Same with Robert Moore, the Association of Special Districts will make that appointment. Ricky is the only one who needs to be appointed by the governor. So we are handling that right now.
Okay, great. Good. Okay, working through that process. So that was good. So our October council meeting, we will be looking for nominations for the officers, starting with chair. Well, let's see. Technically, chair, vice chair. What other positions? I think that's it for now. And so think about who's going to be replacing me. Yeah, that's what I thought. No, that can't be right. So we won't do it at this meeting. But I just want to give you a heads up so that we will be looking for nominations for that for the next meeting. Let's see, anything else on that one? No. Great. Okay, any other questions, comments? So open for public comment or questions. Anybody have anything that they would like to present this time? Yes, Marcel.
Well, I was going to ask Joel to do it before he left, but if you haven't heard, the Great Salt Lake Commissioner's Office, Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, and the Great Salt Lake Watershed Enhancement Trust are all coming out jointly with funding opportunities very soon. I think we were going to announce next week in terms of when it opens and the criteria, but it'll probably be a little bit later, maybe the following week. But there's $50 million that the Commissioner's Office has that's Bureau of Reclamation funding. They've got 3 categories: voluntary water transactions, ecological restoration, which is very much like the wetlands restoration projects that the Trust and FFSL will support and fund, but with a few differences in criteria because of the federal dollars. And then also what they're calling system conservation, which is typically infrastructure, but maybe there's some other creative ideas, but really it's to reduce consumption in the Great Salt Lake Basin and to deliver savings to Great Salt Lake or water to Great Salt Lake. So anyway, just wanted to mention that because there are some good opportunities, and I think there's opportunities for creativity ultimately, even if you might not quite fit the exact criteria. I think there's an opportunity to propose. So,
Marcel, will the criteria include Phragmites removal?
I think that falls into the ecological restoration, not for the trust. I think we've specifically excluded that, but for the other programs, I think that's definitely a possibility. But yeah, there's things you'd have to connect with that. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So that announcement will be going out shortly.
Right.
And
No
then-
later than the 23rd, I hear, but
Okay.
we thought it was going to be Tuesday, but we might.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it'll have an application process and whatever else, right?
Right, and I think the application process will open when the announcement goes out, and then there'll be, the goal is to have 3 months for people.
And
to
where
get their
will the
applications.
announcement be made so that we can tell people where to look for that? Because mostly that's the hard part, is things come out, but nobody knows where to go to look for it.
So I think the best thing we could do, except I know that the Commissioner's Office set up a special website URL, but I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. But if we could get that to Carly, the announcement, she can send it out to everyone. So would that work?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
Okay. And so some of you will get the announcement 5 different ways, maybe. So, and then you can also go to the trust website, which is just gslwatertrust.org. But again, I don't remember the URL they're going to use for the Commissioner's Office. So, do you remember, Candace? Oh, that's okay.
And that doesn't, Hannah said in yesterday's GSLAC meeting that goes live on the 15th.
It's
Is
a
it live?
decision today was kind of like, I don't think that's going to be ready. So.
All right, good.
So, maybe, but
Yeah, if you don't find it, don't give up. Come back on-
yeah, it's coming. It's definitely coming. So.
Okay, just, well, you brought up GSLAC, so there was a comment by McKinley that would, I don't know how to address it either, McKinley, because we've got a couple people that attend that, but it is, sounds like it is overwhelming. We've got 50-plus people online. There's probably 30 people in attendance. I mean, it's probably as bad as this one, but so yeah, it's tough to get a word in edgewise, it sounds like. So something for GSLAC to look at kind of coordination and just, I'm not sure exactly how to address the issues, but it's tough to get involved with it. But yes, Marcel.
I think it would be appropriate for someone to reach out to the chair of GSLAC and provide that feedback. I think,
Okay.
Representative or Tim Hawks would appreciate understanding that and would look at ways to trying to solve that. So,
Okay, perfect. Good idea.
I have one other thing.
Yes, go ahead.
I was just wondering if Teresa could mention the July 31st date for the Great Salt Lake Watershed or Great Salt Lake Distribution Management Plan.
Yeah, so there will be a public meeting on July 31st, I think at 6 o'clock, for the Great Salt Lake Distribution Management Plan that will be rolling out a draft of the model.
Yeah.
Here and online.
Great, good to hear. Yes, Nathan.
I think, Scott, with the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council, I think is what they're experiencing. I think Bear River, the same thing, is the fear we had with that becoming the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council, right? They already had their autonomy.
Yes.
And now they're being told, well, include this other new organization and discuss all these watersheds around you, but they were already so set, it's hard for them, to allow for that in those meetings. I mean, that's a lot of discussion to now discuss multiple other watersheds, and I don't know, again, I don't have the answer, but that was our fear with creating that as the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council and the Watershed Council, that they already had their mission, and now they're forced to have another mission that I don't know that they have the time to include. So I don't know how to address it, but I think our fears are coming true.
I'll have a little discussion with Tim and see if he's got some suggestions, but you're right. Okay, yes, Cam.
If I just might add, one of our concerns of if we have GSLAC meeting and then we set up a Great Salt Lake Watershed Council meeting, are we just creating two very similar groups at two different meetings discussing similar topics? So I think that's one of the concerns that we had, and maybe still do have, but I'm really interested to hear that.
Oh, I think it absolutely would be. I mean, you're going to have the same
but it's
people.
not working in this
No,
mechanism
but
either.
it's-
It doesn't sound like.
It's going to be a huge group no matter what.
Yeah.
Because you're involving all of the local councils that are within the drainage and, yeah. Not sure there's an answer. Rick?
So is GSLAC mean, is it every other month? Is that right it is?
It's quarterly.
Quarterly or every other?
It's about every.
Just one idea might be that every other meeting is one's on the Watershed Council and the other one's
On other
And-
GSLAC, I
local
don't know.
councils.
same-
That's what we've done
Similar
for the
topics, yeah.
Jordan River Watershed Council because it's, yeah.
So that's just an idea, maybe
That's true.
alternate
Good idea.
Yep.
agendas, I guess.
Mr. Chair, I also wonder this council's thoughts on if it would be helpful to invite GSLAC to have a liaison at these meetings, sort of open that discussion a little bit more. I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be a great idea. Okay, good thoughts. All right, any other comments from anyone? Okay, great. Confirming our next meeting is October 7th, so look on your calendars, make sure you've got it on your calendar for 1 o'clock here, again, October 7th.
I've just learned that is during the One Utah Summit.
Oh, boy.
Will that, is that a big issue?
Probably is for most. Okay. Let's see what we got here. October.
And then I think the week following that is a school is out for part of that week. Used to be the UEA conference time, so just a lot of people are out.
How about, let's see, is it the whole week?
No.
Week of the 13th?
No, I think it's
Oh,
just that
usually that weekend.
16th, 17th, yeah.
Well, the 14th looks decent.
As long as it's before
Yes.
Legislative Water Development Commission.
Exactly. 1 to 3 should
Yeah.
be okay.
That works.
Okay.
I'm just checking that this room's available.
Good idea.
I guess we could meet somewhere else. But
That saves me a trip.
Yeah.
Okay, assuming it's okay, we'll switch that to October the 14th at 1 o'clock.
yes, it's available.
Great. Nice.
Cool.
Okay, final call, or we're looking for a motion to dismiss. Yes.
Second.
Thank you, thank you. Everyone have a great rest of your week and weekend.
Okay.
Thank you.